The theme of the laureateship is the art of reading. I thought that, writers go on about being artists and artists go on about being artists. But actually without, if you're a visual artist, if you don't have someone looking at your painting, the painting is nothing. And even more, I think, if you're a writer, the idea you're writing as a form of communication. But it isn't a simple thing, because reading is complex. Reading is a direct response. Reading is critical. So that, therefore, there's an art in what the reader does, which I think is essential for the art of what the writer does. So I just wanted to, establish that more and to set it up so that we're constantly talking about other people's books. We're constantly talking about what we do as readers. I think it's been an exciting time for books. Something like Claire Keegan's book was one of the very first books we did. I think that book has really made a difference, not just to literary people in Ireland, but to actually what's called the ordinary reader, who in Ireland happen to be really ordinary people. And that a lot of people read that book and devoured it. So having her on and being able to talk about, there's one thing I can talk to her about, which is Wexford, which is the topography, which is the Enniscorthy accent, which is what New Ross is like, how New Ross is a town that I don't think anyone's ever said a novel in before. So, I think that started really well, certainly from my point of view. And I think also, choosing books that are sort of classics. I think Elizabeth Bowen's The Last September is a good example, or indeed John McGarren's The Barracks. And we could do those books beside the other books. I think what you learn is, I think you learn from your own reading, but you know it from other people's as well, that no one is settled into a type of book. That people who will read one book will also read another. Doesn't mean they like it, but people's tastes are pretty Catholic. And so I think the big change in Ireland for writers over the last, say, 50, 70 years is not only the stopping of censorship, but the growth of a large group of serious and intelligent readers in Ireland, which has been helped enormously, I think, by the libraries. So partnering with the libraries is really important for me, because Enniscorthy Library when I was growing up, but more than that, Wexford Library, which had a much bigger stock. I remember I was going to study philosophy in UCD, and my mother said to me, "Are you sure?" Because, what can you do with a philosophy degree? So I went down to Wexford Library and I asked them if they had any philosophy books. And I took them home and I didn't like them at all. I liked the idea of philosophy, but the actual reading Plato, reading all that stuff, I found tremendously boring. I know it's my fault, but it was the library, just because I loved short stories and I loved anything literary. I think the key elements of what I've been trying to do as Laureate are, the first one would be partnering with the libraries and doing a monthly event around a book that I chose, that I choose, that I think readers will enjoy. You see, isn't the word. Enjoy comes first, because it's about pleasure. But after that is about analysis, about thinking, about coming to conclusions, about studying. So it is a sort of study group. But of course, I think the principle of pleasure comes really very high in the whole business. I think it's important to actually have a relationship to readers that isn't just you going on the road trying to sell your book. I think part of the great things in the libraries where we weren't actually selling anything to anyone. In other words, that that the events were free, which I think made a very big difference, and also that I suppose that the choice of books, I was trying to make it as Catholic or as just universal as possible to reach as many people as possible. The second thing would be to go into universities where there is intense study now, more than there used to be, because people are studying to become creative writers, and they're looking at having their own texts examined, and they're trying to work out is there a key to this? And of course the answer is there isn't, but it doesn't mean that there aren't things you could hear and listen to and find useful. And one of the other things I'm doing is I'm writing a blog every month. So for next year, for example, I already have 2 blogs in my head. And I was even walking along the street today and thinking, should I open that blog like this or like that? So that, and they're all on literary subjects. For example, what's a novella? No one knows. And to try and tease out, why does no one know? Is it a short story? Why is it not a novel? Why is there no Booker Prize for novellas? So it's stuff like that. And then the other thing then has been, I suppose, a sort of highlight, which is to try and work out what to do. You get a theatre in Galway, and it's going to be free for the audience. You've got to do a lecture. First thing about lectures is they're boring. Anyone's ever been to a lecture? God, a lecture could go on and on. And at one stage I thought, I'd try a lecture. And then I thought, was there anything else I could do that might be more interesting. And I thought if I spoke about my own relationship to various musicians, singers, and forms of music, that I might get somewhere. The first time I heard Laureate singing, the first time I heard Iarla Lynott singing, the fact that I met the composer Frederick May when his first album came out, which he'd written the music for in 1936, and I met him almost 40 years later. So what happened that night was amazing, because the Arts Council agreed that the singers themselves that I was talking about could walk out on the stage. And it was a really good production, in the sense that the first thing to happen was Laureate and Trina coming out to sing. And she sang Dún Logue. And she knows how much I love that song. And then I could start talking about it. And then I could build up to describing, you know, I was in Cooley in West Cork when Iarla Lynott was a very young singer. I mean, he began precociously, but I'm talking about when he was 18. And no one knew what the future for him was going to be, whether that sort of extraordinary talent he had. And coming from a family, you know, his aunt was Elizabeth Cronin, and look, how is he going to live his life? And so it's fascinating now. You could say that, and Iarla sort of had a way of sidling out onto the stage, so people couldn't quite see him at the beginning, and then suddenly it was Iarla. And then at the very end, we did a string quartet. They played the last movement of Frederick May's quartet. So it was, for me, it was just like being able to talk about something you love, and also knowing that that sort of audience now, it's again like reading. People could listen to a string quartet as much as they could listen to a traditional Irish singer, Shamno singer, or indeed someone like Martin Hayes. In other words, that people are not confined anymore. And I just wanted to talk about just my own life. I had been so enriched by music. I thought it was better. I was going to give a lecture on some literary topic, but I thought this might be better. And then, of course, everyone came to hear the singers. One of the strange figures, we're just thinking about highlights, was being able to bring a figure like Kate O'Brien, who isn't read as widely as she was once upon a time, and a novel called The Anteroom, which I think is a very exciting book, but it isn't out of print, but it's not being widely read. And we did an event in Ballymonagh with Una Mannion. And, you know, the two of us really talking about the book and taking questions and listening to comments. And it was a big crowd. And it was really exciting to be, you know, to be introducing a book to readers who are dead curious and, you know, super intelligent and really ready to absorb this book, which is sort of set in the 1880s among a sort of rich Catholic family in Limerick. And it's a funny Irish novel because you don't get that sort of, you know, high bourgeois life much in Ireland or Irish novels. But in any case, the audience seemed to enjoy the book, which was just great for me. But it's really strange that the first year is over, because when you get to my age, time does really fly. You think it isn't possible that a year ago, you know, we were talking about the events we're going to do. But I suppose it has been a great year. I mean, part of the reason isn't just people's love of literature, but it is that COVID was over, or more or less over, so that people could come out and we could go to libraries. We did some events by Zoom, but we did some in public. I think there was a relief in people to be able to do that. And certainly the event in Galway, which was early November, there was certainly that feeling, here we are all back again, you know, so that was very nice.